If you're a Warriors fan, you've probably already wondered how long this team will live on, right? It's tiring to see painful defeat, empty rumors, and promises that never get off the ground. Trade appears in your feed every day, but in the end, nothing changes. Only today is different. A giant deal has been leaked. The NBA has already given its approval, and this mega deal with the Dallas Mavericks could be exactly the turnaround you've been waiting for. Stay with me, because I'm going to show you why this exchange can save the present, protect the future, and completely change the destiny of the Golden State. Before I tell you the behind the scenes of this exchange, do the following. If you really breathe Golden State Warriors and don't want to hear the news anymore only after everything has already happened, subscribe to the channel now, press the red button below, activate the bell to receive each update firsthand, and leave a like on this video. Because this shows YouTube that you are a fan who doesn't abandon the team in difficult times. It's not just a click. It's a way for you to say, I'm with you in this reconstruction. This is how you help this content reach more fans like you, who are confused, angry, but still believe that this game can be turned around. So make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with me until the end, because I'm going to explain step by step what's behind this mega deal between Warriors and Mavs, and what it could mean for the future of the franchise. Let me ask you a direct question. Do you have the feeling that Golden State is one move away from seriously fighting for the title again, but that this move is not necessarily that big newspaper cover name? Because when we talk about exchange, the imagination almost always goes to the same place. Superstar, shirt that sells itself, headline on all portals. But often, what really changes the history of a franchise is precisely the opposite, a silent, surgical, almost discreet decision. And that's exactly where this talk about a possible move involving the Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks comes in. While everyone is spending energy debating whether it is possible to add another star alongside Stephen Curry, discussing scenarios with Anthony Davis, Jimmy Butler, and other impactful names, there is another type of plan being calmly drawn up. It's not the kind of exchange that appears on television's breaking news every 5 minutes, but it's one of those that, months later, you look back on and say, this is where things turned around. The name that comes into play is Naji Marshall, winger for the Dallas Mavericks. If you follow the NBA more on the surface, he may not be the player you see most in highlight reels or among the most talked about on social media, and that's precisely what makes everything even more interesting. Marshall is not thought of as a star to change the team's marketing, but rather as a player to change the way the team works on the court. It's planning, not impulse. Let's set the stage. Golden State just added Seth Curry to the roster. Yes, Stephen's brother, a specialist in shooting threes, another perimeter player in a backcourt that is already full of qualified people. At the same time, DeAnthony Melton is close to returning from injury. Result? Suddenly, the guard rotation looks like a congested hallway during rush hour. There is too much talent in the same range of the cast, and when that happens, one thing becomes very clear for any direction. You have bargaining currency, and that's exactly where the team's vulnerability comes in. If there are plenty of options on the perimeter, in the wing and power forward positions, the conversation is very different. There is a lack of a player with a consistent combination of defense and attack, someone who can attack the box, finish in contact, and at the same time offer defensive versatility. In short, there is a lack of a winger who is reliable on both sides of the court and who can sustain the intensity when the game takes on a playoff look. When the defenses adjust, the pace becomes more physical and the spaces disappear. Within this context, Buddy Hield becomes a central point. He has been the target of criticism for his defensive side, something that is nothing new for anyone. But at the same time, it carries a very valuable strategic element, the contract. The salary is very close to Naji Marshall's, which makes engineering the switch much simpler. The idea here is not to simply get rid of Hield out of frustration. The logic is different. Understanding that with Curry, Melton, Podziemski, Gary Payton II, and other names sharing minutes on the perimeter, Hield's space tends to decrease drastically. So, instead of keeping a player who could lose his protagonism, you transform him into someone who fills exactly the gap that the team has been carrying for months. And this is where Najee Marshall's profile gains strength. He is not the type of player who fills official stores with a sold shirt. It is not the one that generates trends meme company, is not the constant protagonist of the night's highlights. However, within any project that dreams of winning a title, there is a type of athlete that is indispensable. The one who does the heavy lifting, makes the right decisions, doesn't need the ball all the time, and adapts to different formations. Marshall fits exactly into this category. The numbers help to illustrate, but they don't tell everything. Double-digit scoring, solid rebounding, a few assists, consistent minutes in Dallas, all of this already shows that he produces. However, the most interesting point is how he does it. He doesn't thrive on shooting high-volume threes, something we normally associate with Golden State's game. His specialty is something else, attacking the paint, going inside hard, absorbing contact, finishing close to the basket efficiently. On a team that often finds itself hostage to contested shots from the perimeter, having someone who looks into space, sees an opening, and simply attacks. Without hesitation, completely changes the offensive dynamic. When it comes time for the postseason, this characteristic gains even more weight. You know how it is. Defenses study every detail. Curry's marking borders on the absurd. The game slows down, and outside shots, no matter how good they are, go through moments of oscillation. In these scenarios, having a winger who catches the ball, lowers his shoulder, enters the box, and forces the defense to make different decisions is almost a luxury. On defense, Marshall is not far behind. With his height, wingspan, and reading of the game, he can occupy different positions. He can accompany shorter guards in exchanges without being easily beaten off the dribble, and at the same time offers the body to deal with stronger wingers. In exchange-based systems like Steve Kerr's, this versatility is gold. It allows you to assemble different quintets without the team being exposed in a specific point on the court. And, let's face it, this is something that failed several times when players with defensive limitations were on the court alongside other fragile players. On the Dallas side, the picture is also multi-layered. As much as Marshall is delivering, the franchise is going through a moment of uncertainty, trying to find a roster model that maximizes what Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving can offer. There is constant talk about restructuring, about the draft, about adjusting the surroundings of the main stars. In this equation, as valuable as Marshall is, he could end up being seen as a negotiable piece if the objective is to change the design of the squad or open the way for another type of bet. Furthermore, his contract is highly interesting for any team that wants to compete now without compromising the future. Affordable prices, controlled duration, team option. In a league scenario with increasingly strict salary rules, having someone productive, versatile, and at a reasonable cost is almost a privilege. From a financial point of view, this type of player is the dream of any front office that still wants to save ammunition for future bigger moves. There is, however, an important detail in the equation. The Mavericks are operating above the first apron, which greatly limits the possibility of receiving more salary than they send. This tends to complicate direct negotiations, but does not prevent the exchange from taking place. It just means that, almost inevitably, a third team enters the story to absorb, adjust, and balance the score. And it is precisely in this type of more complex operation that the Warriors' management has a history of creativity and coolness. When looking at Golden State's side, the possible exchange for Marshall attacks three fundamental points at the same time. First, it solves a structural mismatch in the squad. An excess of qualified guards and a shortage of forwards with physical vigor, defensive reading, and the ability to score close to the rim. Second, it protects the team from a risk that is visible, but that many people still underestimate, the future of Jonathan Kuminga. Third, it keeps the club breathing in terms of financial flexibility, without tying the project to long and cumbersome contracts that could become a problem in 2 seasons. About Kuminga, it's worth taking a closer look. He is a player who has already shown flashes of something special: athleticism, impact in transition, moments when he seems ready to make a leap. At the same time, continuity has not yet appeared in the way expected. Extension negotiations stalled, doubts began to arise. To what extent is it worth committing a high value in the long term for someone who still fluctuates? If the Warriors decide at some point to use Kuminga in a larger package for another type of piece, the wing rotation is vulnerable. Having Marshall already included in the squad before then would be a smart way to prevent a hole that could suddenly appear. Of course, there is always the temptation to think big. The question naturally arises, why not join contracts, add doctor choices aft, put Kuminga in the package, and go after another name with great immediate impact? The answer involves a reflection that is not always popular among fans. Negotiating for stars is extremely risky. The league's recent history is full of examples of super trades that seemed irresistible on the day of the announcement and turned into dead weight on the roster just a few months later. Injury, poor fit, drop in performance, personality clash. All of this happens much more frequently than you might imagine. Meanwhile, there is a more discreet but often more effective path, improving the cast in layers. Instead of looking for the movement that solves everything, build a series of coherent decisions, each one adjusting a small detail. It's the type of work that doesn't generate an explosion of comments on the day, but it usually appears when the playoffs start and you realize that the team has answers for different types of opponents. When we look at the way Steve Kerr likes to put together his quintets, this philosophy makes even more sense. He values low formations with a lot of mobility, defensive exchange, and players who don't block the attack. It is not the profile of a coach who will give 30 minutes a night to a traditional center who only protects the rim and takes little part in the rest of the game. In a system like this, wingers who can move between positions, guard different types of players, and at the same time threaten close to the basket without depending on plays called exclusively for them, become indispensable. Again, Marshall's profile fits that mold exactly. Now, there is one factor that cannot be ignored in any serious analysis of the Warriors' future: time. Stephen Curry is no longer a young man emerging. He is a veteran still at a very high level, but at a stage in his career where each season without a real title challenge weighs differently. It is not possible to talk about 5-year projects or long reconstructions. Each decision needs to be thought through the filter of now and the short term, without, however, completely sacrificing what comes later. Within this context, Naji Marshall represents a kind of balance. He is not the type of reinforcement that requires handing over a large part of the franchise's future. He's not someone you send every possible pick, every promising youngster, and still accept a massive contract. At the same time, he is a player ready to contribute immediately, who does not need 3 years of development, who understands his role and is capable of making an impact in big games without seeking forced protagonism. From Dallas's side, the reasoning may also make sense. If the management opts for a deeper reorganization, whether targeting the draft future or adjusting the fit around Doncic and Irving, Marshall could be sacrificed to bring a profile that is lacking today. More shooting in volume, for example. Buddy Hield, in this aspect, delivers something that stands out. In a team that depends so much on Luka's creation, having a three-point specialist with a very high volume of shots can be an important offensive relief. And, from a contractual point of view, the adjustment is not that important. Naturally, such an operation would require a third party to balance the books, absorb part of the salaries, and receive some compensation, draft picks, youth, expiring contracts. But this type of triple composition has become routine in the modern NBA. There has never been so much creativity in exchanges, so many indirect ways to reach the final result. If you stop to think about it, the central question is not, will this move make headlines, but rather, will this move make the team better where it needs it most without creating a new problem? And in practice, the answer tends to be positive in Marshall's case. He attacks the main lack of the squad, uses the guard depth as leverage, keeps the financial organization under control, and even offers cover for bigger decisions that could involve Kuminga or other players in the future. It is also important to understand the size of the risk. No one is saying that Marshall is a guarantee of absolute success. It may be that adaptation does not happen as expected, that the issue of three-point shooting limits its presence in certain quintets, that some adjustments become necessary over time. However, When looking at the acquisition cost, the starting point is clear. Golden State would not be sacrificing a luxury package to bring him. It would be a swap between rotating pieces, a calculated bet that one side fits better than the other. At the other end, the reward potential is significant. If he adapts well to the system, takes advantage of the spaces created by Curry, the constant movement of the attack, and the collective intelligence of the squad, Marshall could become that player who, in a playoff series, always seems to be in the right place at the right time. The type of wing that catches decisive offensive attack, who cuts inside when everyone looks at the line of three, who manages a defensive stop at the moment the opponent is on the move. When it comes to roster construction around a star the size of Stephen Curry, it's not just about the big trade that makes the noise. It's about a set of continuous decisions, coherent and aligned with the game philosophy. It's paying attention to that detail that, seen in isolation, seems small, but which, added to others, makes the difference between being competitive and being a real candidate for the title. Therefore, when conversations about Najee Marshall and the Golden State Warriors arise, the first reaction may be one of strangeness. Is that all? But when you take the focus off the immediate media impact and fit this movement into the full context, it acts like chess in which each piece has a very specific role. The exchange stops seeming small and starts to have another dimension. In the end, the question is simple. Do you prefer to bet all your chips on a single shot and hope that everything goes well, accepting the risk of a collapse? Or do you prefer to build a team that, piece by piece, eliminates its weaknesses until reaching the point where, when the ball goes up in May, you know that you have answers for almost everything the opponent tries? It is exactly this second path that a player like Najee Marshall can silently transform into one of the most important moves of the season for the Golden State Warriors. And that's why, when everyone is still distracted by the glitter of headline-making super trades, those who really understand team building are looking at this movement and thinking something else. If the Golden State has the courage to be smart instead of just being loud, this kind of decision could be exactly what separates another frustrating season from a real run towards the title. Sometimes the game doesn't change with a bang of fireworks. He changes with a silent play that, when he enters the court, makes everything around him work better. If you want to follow every step of this process, every rumor that appears behind the scenes, every possibility of exchange, every detail of the reconstruction around the Curry, don't stop here. As soon as you finish this video, go straight to the pinned comment and click on the Golden State Warriors News Today playlist. There, I gathered everything. Complete analyses, daily updates, exchange scenarios, behind the scenes, and the entire soap opera that is redesigning the future of the franchise. If you're the type of fan who isn't content with hearing the news late, who wants to understand the context, the consequences, and what might come next, this playlist is your next step. So scroll down, look for the pinned comment, click on Golden State Warriors News Today, and stay with me in this complete coverage until the last behind-the-scenes decision.